I'm going to be honest with you, I was not that excited to be driving this 2016 second generation Nissan Note to review, because from what I knew of this car, it was obviously a spacious and practical car, small, economical, but not very exciting, not very interesting. But then I sat down with my laptop and I did my research into the car, and I found, actually, you know what? This Nissan Note, pretty clever. Nissan really put a lot of effort into this car. They put a lot of thought. Its closest true rival is the perennial Honda Jazz, which is a fantastic car. And this car, on paper, is a very good rival to that car. You can see that Nissan, they were definitely looking at the Honda Jazz with jealous green eyes and thinking, we need to build one of those. So this car, it has a very clever seating system in the back. The shape of this car, which is quite boxy, is very well utilised for fitting things in. Secondly, this car is very lightweight. It actually only weighs just over 1 tonne. For a spacious practical car like this is really light, and that of course means fuel efficiency. It means a little bit more nippy in the corners. You know, you've got less bulk to be shoving around those twisty bends. The next thing that caught my eye as a petrol head was that this car is available with a supercharger. There are not many practical hatchbacks that I can think of that have a supercharger under the bonnet. Now, unfortunately, this car, it doesn't. This is the standard 1.2. That's why, on paper, I think that Nissan Note is interesting and it's worth your time. It's worth watching the rest of this video to find out, is it actually any good? So the first thing to note about this car is that it was not an expensive car when it was new. So set your sights in terms of quality at the kind of Nissan Micra level, underneath the Nissan Juke, which was a slightly more aspirational, posery kind of car. But all that said, the interior is very nicely laid out. There's a sort of rounded, sculpted kind of situation going on with the centre console and the dials in front. You've got multiple little circular screens, like there's one for the climate control here, which has all of the controls around it in a circle, which actually is quite easy to use and close to hand. The vents are circular and you can aim them in any which way direction you like. And then on the dials in front, you've got a circular dial in the middle, which has various bits of information like how many miles left you've got, current MPG and the time. On the right hand side, another little circular dial with your trip information, how many miles the car's done, and the fuel. Getting comfortable in this car, it is quite basic. You know, you can adjust the seat up and down on all but the basic models. Steering wheel, it only goes up and down, it doesn't come in and out, so you can't get the absolute best driving position. The gear change feels just like the Micras, and it's actually really nice. In fact, this whole car, very easy to drive. As soon as I got in this car, I just set off in it, drove away, and there was no sort of learning how to drive it. The thing that surprised me actually was that although the inputs are nice and light, like the brake pedal, the accelerator pedal, the gear change, there is actually a little bit of weight to the steering. Modern cars, they do suffer from a very light steering, but this car, it does have a little bit of something. Nissan definitely had town driving in mind when they built this car. You can tell because when you're at higher speeds, 50, 60 miles an hour, you get quite a lot of noise coming into the cabin, like wind noise and road noise. Apart from that, this car is very capable for long distance. It's got an armrest, which is, you don't always get that in smaller cars. It's got a blind spot monitoring system in this car, so it's clearly designed to be on the motorway and cover long distance. This car is the N-Tec model, which is fairly high up the range of equipment levels. There was various different models like the entry-level Vizier, which did not have very much stuff on it. The Accenter, this N-Tec, and then there was a Tecna, which was the one that you really wanted, had all the cool stuff on it. This car, with it being the N-Tec, has a reversing camera. You've got the Nissan Safety Shield system, which is the Nissan sort of word for blind spot monitoring and lane assist, where it basically tells you if you're coming out of lane on a motorway. It doesn't actually steer the car for you or anything, it just warns you. You have this touchscreen infotainment system with built-in sat-nav, but of course the sat-nav is very old hat now. This car came out in 2013 and I would probably just use Google Maps on my phone if this was my car. What you don't have, which is on the Tecna model, is the cameras in the wing mirrors and at the front of the car, which means you get this stitched together 360 view of everything that's going on around you, which is really good, I find, for parking a car in a bay, because you can actually see the lines each side. So if you're someone who struggles to reverse park or park a car into a parking bay, Tecna model is the one to have, because you can see exactly where you are in that space. So now we get to the most important part of this video, and that is practicality, because this car let's face it, wouldn't be worth anything if it wasn't practical. It starts off good because up front you've got a double glove box, so you've got a section on the top which is actually quite small, but you've got a USB port and aux in there. You've got decent sized door bins which will fit the fat bottom bottle in them, and a couple of cup holders here in front of the gear stick which don't quite fit the fat bottom bottle. Then you can see that Nissan were copying Honda's homework when it came to the storage and cubby holes in this car, because underneath the steering wheel, this little tray, but it's quite small. To the side of the steering wheel, you've got this tiny little cubby hole, which if you put anything in there, it would just come out. There's no rubberized thing, there's no way of anything staying in it. And the same goes for the one underneath the climate controls. It's just a flat plastic area that will just not really hold on to anything. Pretty decent sized section in the center console here in the middle, a little bit here that you'd probably put your key if you had the Tecna version with the keyless entry. But of course, the most important part is the back. That means that today, Backseat JJ has the most important part of this review. Well, this rear legroom is absolutely atrocious. Just kidding. Oh wait, it's absolutely amazing. As you can see, you basically got a choice between lots of room for the rear passengers or lots of room in the boot. With the seat fully back, I've apparently got more legroom than a BMW 7 Series, which is the big luxury saloon limo. Because of this car is a sort of boxy shape, I've got lots of headroom. If the seat's forward, you've got a boot far bigger than any Volkswagen Golf, Ford Focus, which are cars much bigger than this car. With the seats as far back as they'll go, you've still got more boot space than, say, a Vauxhall Corsa or a Ford Fiesta. So it's win-win with this car. Of course, the seats also fold forward, giving you space to fit longer items, bigger items. They don't fold flat, but you can raise the rear boot floor to sort of level out the rear floor to make it kind of van-like. With the seats down, the actual space that you get, it's bigger than basically any car of this class of this time. I've got a nice armrest here with cup holders in it, but they don't fit the fat bottom bottle. I've got adjustable headrest, which is of course important when you've got your kids, your teenagers in the back. These doors here, they open ridiculously wide. If you want to get a kid seat in here, it'll just slide right in because the doors open to like 90 degrees. So there's pockets on the back of the seat so your kids can put all their chewed up chewing gum and bits of crisps and food in there. And you've got a little door pocket here. And yeah, that's the back of the Nissan Note, so back to you, mate. You know what, mate? That was very professional of you. So yeah, thanks for that. This car has the 1.2 litre 3-cylinder petrol with 80 horsepower. It is of course not particularly fast. It will get up a hill if you need it to. It just makes a lot of racket doing it. When you put your foot down, it's like, why? Why are you doing this to me? As I mentioned in the start of this video, there is a supercharged engine available, and that means you've got more power. It also means you've got more economy, so it's a win-win, and it is definitely the engine I would pick. Then of course there's a diesel engine, and that is for long journeys only. If you are somebody who just pops to the shops in your car, takes the kids to school, has a short commute, get a petrol. You've got things like DPF filters that clog up, you've got injectors that clog up. They have to be driven long distance and get up to temperature to be reliable. Speaking of reliability, Nissan in the 80s and 90s, it basically meant reliability. Nowadays, they've been diluted somewhat in their engineering with Renault and other brands, and they're not what they were, but by and large, the Note, it doesn't have very many reports of bad reliability or anything. A couple of electrical glitches here and there. I said at the start of this video, this car is very lightweight. And you're probably thinking, well, why did I get so excited about that? Why is that relevant or important to your average driver? Well, probably the most important thing for most of us is, if a car weighs less, the engine has to work a lot less harder to shift that car along, and therefore you save a lot of money in terms of fuel usage. This particular entry-level 1.2 litre will get you easily 50 miles per gallon. The diesel will get you more like 70. It's very economical. The emissions are very low, and what that means for you and me is that the tax in the UK is £20 a year for this car and £0 a year for the supercharged or diesel car. It's a 40 litre fuel tank, so you're talking 50 quid to fill this car up, and then you can do over 500 miles with that 50 quid. So the big thing that seemed to let this car down in reviews at the time was the fact that it's only a 4-star Euro NCAP safety rating, which is a little bit disappointing because although it's only out of 5 stars, all the other cars at that time that were any good were getting 5 stars. The Honda Jazz, for example, of this era was a 5-star car. But what I will say is, when you actually look into the numbers behind that safety rating, they're pretty comparable. It must have just missed it by a slither. A real shame for Nissan that they didn't just put in that slight more effort to get the 5 stars. I don't think it would put me off this car over the Honda Jazz. Now, what might put me off over the Honda Jazz is the slightly less versatile rear seating arrangement. Obviously the Jazz is just unparalleled in its absolute practicality in that regard. Otherwise, this car is a very credible rival to that car, and a good car in its own right. As I said right at the beginning, it's a more interesting car than you might give it credit for. So yeah, thank you very much to my mate Neil for lending me this car. If you do want to see the review on the Honda Jazz, which I highly recommend before you make your mind up whether you're going to buy one of these or one of those, that's up there. Yeah, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.